Thank you. Welcome to the second peer-to-peer. The topic out there is a topic which involves identity, involves culture, involves politics, involves history. All of it is there in me. Take a very good look at me. This is me, female first, another layer, South Asian possibly, yet another layer, religion indeterminate. You can't really make out by looking at me which religion I profess if you didn't know my name, if you hadn't heard it before. Hence, there are layers out here. Right where I stand, if I wasn't outside a mosque or a temple, you wouldn't even bring up the issue of religion. Unfortunately, it keeps coming up. And hence, the concept of radicalization. By definition, I'm not going into the scholarly researches into radicalization, but from what little I've read, I find that most of the definitions have originated in reports of security agencies. NYPD, your police department of New York. There's one, the Norwegian Social Security report, oft quoted. In almost all the studies, they start off with these definitions. So here are state agencies, enforcement, security agencies, framing the definition. The media following, academia also following. For me, that is not relevant. I take a very commonsensical view of radicalization as the process by which an extreme view is adopted. Social, cultural, political, religious, so extreme that it counters. It wants to challenge the status quo, and it is not happy with the various channels of freedom of expression. And it has the potential for violence. So there's a lot of, it's become like a catchword, RVE, radicalization into violent extremism. You'll find it in the academic literature. So it may be dormant, it may not be violent in its manifestation, or it may be violent. That is the radicalization I'm working with in my thoughts. And who is the group we're talking about? We're talking about the Muslim population in India, huge in numbers. Anything in India is huge in numbers, obviously, when you have a 1.25 billion population. We are 172 million, the second largest in terms of numbers globally, but we are hugely diverse. There is not one Muslim population. So diverse, in fact, that if in the state of Tamil Nadu, a Muslim spoke with a Muslim from the state of Uttar Pradesh, they wouldn't follow each other because they would be speaking different tongues, different languages, and they would have ethnically grown up differently, eating different foods, observing different local cultural and folk practices, along with the Eid and the Bakrid, of course. So keep in mind, huge diversity. So why aren't we radical? Why is it that, last year, one is not getting into the politics of it. But last year, I recall Fareed Zakaria had an interview with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who had just, newly entered office. And the Prime Minister said, Al-Qaeda is delusional to think if Indian Muslims will be attracted to it. Why did he say that? What was it about this community in this very, very ancient land? We have a civilization going back 5,000 years in the very least. What is it that prompted this confidence? The first confidence comes from a pluralism and a syncretic culture. We are many, we are diverse. There are 4,599 ethnic communities in India, by the way. We speak 345 languages, 22 of which are officially recognized in our constitution as national languages. Across all the 12 linguistic scripts, our languages can be found. There are more than 12 or 14 scripts in which our languages are expressed. I've put a little link on the first slide about the ethnographic study done for India. If some of you are interested, you can take it from there. In this huge diversity, Muslims have lived cheek by jowl with so many different cultures, religions. We have all the 8 major religions in our country, 4 of which, Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, are homegrown. The others came in, whether through trade. Islam came in through trade. Islam also came in through conquests from Central Asia. Christianity came in through the missionaries. And in all this, when we have lived with diversity, we have lived with a hybrid kind of an identity which militates against Puritanism of any sort. We wouldn't know what is Puritan because we have lived with a notion of religion where my childhood friend, there's a Louis, a Christian, there's a Vismita, a Hindu, there's a Pavneet, a Sikh, all of whom came to each other's homes, ate each other's foods, felt extreme levels of comfort. And when you grow up like that, the hate, which is an integral part of radicalization, just cannot be born. You cannot imagine feeling a psychology of hatred, antipathy, antagonism against people, communities with whom you have grown up. That is what we call our composite culture. Excuse the spelling mistake there. And this composite culture has come about as a matter of necessity. Because when you are pluralist and when you live, as I said, in a densely packed tin of sardine kind of a situation, you really can't know when your boundary ends and where the other's boundary begins. It's like a permeable membrane. Things are always being absorbed, things are always being sent out. So what develops is a very composite culture where notions of absolutism, exclusivism are just not existent. And in this, we have a whole universe of Sufism and Bhakti. The Sufism is Sufi Muslims, Sufi Islam. It's a branch of Islam which is more mystical, which is more ascetic, which is more into a direct connection with God, God as my lover, as my beloved. It shirks institutionalized religion. It speaks of sulhe kul, peace for all. That is the Islam which essentially established early Islam in India. These wandering mystics would travel the countryside. They would get their followers. Some would convert, some would not, but they would be revered. And when they died, there would be a mausoleum or a little tomb constructed over their burial ground, and that would be called a dargah. And that dargah would be visited by people of all faiths. You may have heard of Ajmer Sharif Dargah, Nizamuddin Aulia's Dargah. Those are the big names. But in every city, every village of the country, there are smaller dargahs. There's, for example, the place called Nagaur in Tamil Nadu, a tiny little town. And there is a shrine of Nagaur Baba, who is also called Andavar, Nagaur Andavar, which means the god of Nagaur. And he invites devotees from all religions who go there to get the charms and the amulets and see that a child gets cured if he has a little fever. It is the faith which is curing, or the change in climate which is curing. But what is being created in the process is a huge bonded, interrelated network of relationships across communities. And none of these peers, none of these saints, none of these gurus ever demanded conversion. You went to Ajmer Sharif as a Hindu. You returned as a Hindu, and you still felt connected to that Ajmer Baba, to the saint Chishti. Just as a Muslim went as a Muslim, put his little chadar as an offering on the shrine and returned as a Muslim. But both felt connected. It is this culture which has kept us bound intrinsically. And this culture, this composite culture, has permeated our arts also. Music, our music, Hindustani classical music is one of our classical music traditions. We have two main classical musical traditions, the Hindustani and the Carnatic. The Hindustani is a direct product of the interaction of Islamic influences, Persian influences, and the indigenous Indian Hindu roots. When they combine, you have great music. You have music which children of all denominations learn. For example, my daughter is learning Carnatic music. When she plays Carnatic music on her little keyboard, she sings Raminchuva Revarura Raghu Tama Ninuvina. Raghu is Ram. And she's actually singing an invocation to Ram by a very ancient scholar poet she possibly doesn't understand it. She plays it for the underlying raga, the musical notation that it embodies. The moment it's over, she's out of it and she's gone, and she's studying in an English medium school. I studied in a Christian missionary school. So I read my Jataka tales, my Panchatantras, all of which are these little children's literature derived from our Sanskritic traditions, as very happy short stories with morals and ethics and little values of growing up. And then I went to school and I read my Enid Blytons and my Agatha Christie's. And then the Maulvi came in the evening and taught me the Quran, and we learned to read the Quran, learn the Arabic also. Everything happened side by side, completely seamlessly, without boundaries, so that finally a product which emerges cannot be traced to any one tradition. It is a composite product, and it is that composite, multicultural, multi-faith product which is the reason why hate cannot create cleavages or fault lines in our societies very easily. Part of the answer also lies in our history, lies in the way our freedom movement, our nationalist movement for the anti-colonial movement against the British rule, the manner in which it was forged. It was forged with very strong secular movements, with the ideology prevalent of sarva dharma samabhav. Sarva dharma, every religion, dharma, samabhav, equal respect. When you create a freedom struggle in which you forge erstwhile communities which were not really nationally oriented, and you bring them together in a struggle for a common national identity, and you do it without placing religion as the identifier for nationalism, you have laid the bulwark for a new kind of a political tradition when your new country emerges, where secularism of that sort, sarva, dharma, samabhav, automatically gets printed into your constitution. Where the Gandhian thought is there all around you. You know, Mahatma Gandhi is not something that you just read off as a chapter in a school book. He's there in our songs, he's there in our movies, he's there in our local idiom, in the kind of food we eat, in the kind of habits that we try to practice. He's there in little posters and stickers at our workplaces. When that kind of a culture of non-violence, please remember, ahimsa, that was one of the pillars of the entire movement of nationalism that we forged, where if any of you have seen that movie Gandhi by Ben Kingsley, you found people just went out unarmed and faced the batons of the police of the British Army. One got hit, bloody, fell down. A second got hit, bloody, fell down. A third, a fourth, 100th, 1,000. How many can you hit? How many can you injure? How much of blood can you absolutely let out? Till the point that the police themselves are sickened. There are now reports which say the policemen who had participated in those kind of actions for the maintenance of British rule were themselves sickened when they had to hit and coerce the unarmed Indians who were hell-bent. Fill up the prisons, we'll just go and fill them and drown you out in numbers. If that is the national movement that we have learnt of, that we have lived through, whose paragons have even become our leaders in the early parts, Zakir Hussain was part of the national movement. He was a president of India. So it is a country where religious identities do not get suppressed, where we do not perceive that there is no opportunity. I'm a minority. I am a double jeopardy woman, a minority. I do not have access. Well, here I am in a peer-to-peer. Here are all those people. There was APJ Abdul Kalam as president. We have had prime ministers, presidents, people in our national politics from across religious denominations. In fact, there was a Jew who commanded the Indian army when we won the 1971 war against Pakistan, General Jacob. You find them in every complexion, in every denomination. So when you have a history of that richness, that depth, and that interrelated as far as religious harmony is concerned. You cannot but be respectful and multicultural in your primary ethos. Mahatma Gandhi went on a 21-day fast in 1924. You know, he just used fasting as a political weapon, or also as a weapon of self-cleansing. Whenever he found Hindus and Muslims were at war, there was a conflict, there is communal disharmony, discord, he went on a fast for 21 days, would you believe it? Until the communities were forced to reconcile, come back to him because they valued his life, the country valued his life. This is the tradition which undergirds the national identity of not just Muslims, of every community in India. The third limb of the answer perhaps lies in our constitution and our faith that rule of law works. Sometimes limpingly, like in all countries. Nothing is ever perfect, but it is not so critically wounded that, you know, like that a Burundi or a Rwanda or a Yugoslavia will result and there will be a complete ethnic collapse. We cannot envisage a situation. We have had huge amounts of conflict. Yes, interreligious, communal conflicts, but those are with our own socio-cultural frames, for our own local political causes, fomented by our own local political interests. Those are not pan-Islam. None of those attract identities which say a Muslim organization located elsewhere, and Al-Qaeda and ISIS, for example, could have the loyalty of a Muslim from India. And when within the country there have been conflicts, there have been communal riots, what have we done? Sometimes we have really had terrible riots. The 1947, when we got independent, there were absolute mayhem kind of riots when the two communities were dividing, one to go to Pakistan and another one to stay in India. And there was bloodshed. There was another round of riots in 1992 when the Babri Masjid, a huge historical figure institution which was revered by both Muslims and Hindus, was, as a part of a huge political build-up, was torn down. We had riots across the country. These are fault lines that one accepts, but where we find that the country just draws back from the brink. Why do we draw back? How do we draw back? What is it that we draw upon in those moments of crisis to complete that picture of harmony? These are our very strong network of intercultural relationships, of associational foundations. We have schools, we have trade associations, we have reading rooms, we have libraries, we have multiple fora in which the community meets and engages beyond the strictly political and the religious. And it is these which cause the community to draw on its own energy, its own sort of common sense survival instincts, and overcome the fault lines as and when they occur. But always remember, the fault lines are domestic. We also have our local grown terrorist groups. We have Indian Mujahideen, but their operations are localized, and their operations are categorically condemned by the community. It's not as if there's a half and half, you know, my secret sympathies lie with them, and I'm in the gray zone as far as condemning them is concerned. You will find them. So there is a compulsion for moderation when you believe that the democratic tradition is working. The democratic tradition is old. We conduct elections. The last one that we conducted it with 815 million registered voters. Can you imagine? The largest election jamboree in the world. It was conducted in 9 phases. The last one in 2014 for getting a new prime minister and the new parliament. 9 phases over 35 days. And there were no, what are those, fly votes, butterfly votes? What were those which squared the pitch in one of the George Bush kind of election scenarios? We never have those because we have our EVMs. We have electronic voting machines. Our processes are transparently done. They inspire faith in every community that the rule of law can prevail. And democracy is the way to hammer out your competing interests. Everyone wants that little pie. the national pie. It's growing very fast at the moment, by the way, compared to other pies in other parts of the world. Everybody wants a part of it, but we do not want a part of it by killing our neighbor. I would rather compete, I would rather go through the electoral process, I would rather seek higher representation in parliament or in the state legislatures, because I have seen that process work, election after election after election. Hence, we prefer the political jousting over the bomb exploding. We prefer the electoral scramble, and we feel empowered through democracy. Now, everything may not be hunky-dory. Sometimes underdevelopment, poverty, these are issues that may be spoken of as creating dissension, as the reason why communities can tend to go into a sullen, ghettoized kind of a mode and not be fully integrated and out there. But see the last bullet point, we may be poor, but we never feel disempowered or alienated. In 2006, I remember, the government of India came out with a report called the Sachar Committee report. Justice Sachar of the Supreme Court was tasked to study the socio-economic conditions of the Muslims in India and to come out with an objective report, indices where they lack, what is to be done. And it was, in a sense, a damning report for the government, because it showed that the Muslims were behind even the so-called lower castes, who we consider as the most deprived, the really poor, the really educationally and economically backward group in the country. The Muslims were behind them in education and economic indices also. So what happened? The government came out with some targeted minority development programs. There were scholarships for education, there were credit lines for those who earlier did not have access to credit, all of which was created as a matter of policy. All of which is being implemented, again, with little limps here, a little hiccups there, but it is in the pipeline, it is there, and it is visible. And it was a report the government itself had called for. So when that is the country you live in, no group, no matter how impoverished, no matter how underdeveloped, no matter how far left behind, would ever feel that I am left behind so much that I need to take up arms to get what is my due. Because I know my due is very much available out there, and there is a larger concern. Because everyone understands you can't have a country, as we say now, India is poised for growth, India is now a new kind of a world leader, India is growing at 7%, where the rest of the world is 2% and China is 6%. All of those, you cannot say it effectively if you have a very large population remaining behind. You have to take everyone along. The leadership recognizes it. The society recognizes it. And hence, there is a political push for moderation. It is sort of a necessity in our country to be moderate. You cannot be extremist and yet carry the country forward. Those are the four limbs that I could think of. But beyond that, I could think of issues that are not really identifiable to an academic kind of economic, political, historical, sociological. It's not that. It's completely about just living together. It's about crossing permeable membranes, as I told you. May I, Martha, show a tiny one little video? I have three. I'll take one and stop halfway. This is a video about a temple outside of Ahmedabad in a place called Jhulasan in the Gujarat district, which had been, in the state of Gujarat for its communal riots, for its recent little bickery kind of a past, has been in the news. Here is a Hindu temple with a Muslim deity, Dola Devi, as God. And what is peculiar? Okay, wait, have I put the volume down? Yes. No, why isn't it coming? Oh, I've done it there. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, please. Let me stop. Ouch. No, this is some other volume going on. Shall I again switch it back? Yeah. And the funny thing about the Dola is that, there are 1,800 villages, persons from that little town who have got US citizenship. So they have now made it into a Dola is equal to dollar. So they've said, if you pray there, you get the US green card. So around these created traditions, now how can I identify that with Islam or with Hinduism or with Christianity or with anything? It is just a local, homegrown, living together kind of a tradition that has developed in a state where apparently the two communities are expected to be or are supposedly at loggerheads most of the time. I have other videos. There is one where there's a temple in Karnataka, which is a Shiva temple, which is frequented by Hindus and Muslims and people of all other faith. Because whenever they have to start something which is about, which is sort of inaugural, which is festive, it always has to start by giving an offering at that temple. How do you explain Muslims going to a temple if somebody who just follows one notion of what is Muslim would possibly not understand? But those guys seem to be living pretty well, carrying on with their daily business, and absolutely having no qualms about identity, culture, because they go back home and they do their namaz also. This is the kind of thing that I would not like to preach. If somebody asked me, is there a lesson in it for others? Let me come back. I would not like to preach because I don't have absolute answers. But I just have one example from one multicultural setting of one integrated way of living, where obviously multiculturalism, as you hear in all these French debates, the British debates, the US debates, how to handle multiculturalism, is not being done through policy, not being done through include one chapter on Islam in the school textbook along with one chapter on Protestant Christianity. It's not being done like that. It's being done by just living together, eating together, having friends from everywhere, and feeling universal, feeling that all are my own, and that the barriers, if any, are not around religion at least. They may be around neighborhoods, maybe around the north and the south, the east and the west, but they are also very permeable, ever-shifting barriers. So culture and religion always works in different contexts. And that is the reason I feel that, I'll give you an example. When I got married and went to my in-laws' place in the village, I went in the car and the village women came to take me out from the car. And here is a new bride, gets down. I'm offered a little bowl of curd yogurt, asked to dip my finger in it. Do so. Another bowl of water with little live fish swimming around in it. Dip. Dip. And I go in, and then they put the sindoor, the vermilion in my parting. The parting of my hair is filled with vermilion. This is a state in eastern India, Bihar. I'm a little surprised because I always thought that, vermilion is something the Hindu women put in their parting as a sign of their being married. Some days later, I attend a Hindu marriage in the same village. And lo and behold, the wife does a dip and a vermilion. So the marriage rituals are all local folk traditions. They've just grown up together like the songs sung at the weddings. No one calls them Muslim songs and Hindu songs or Christian songs and Jain songs. We have a temple, we have a church, some call it a temple, church called Velankani. It's in the state of in Tamil Nadu, a church, a Catholic church, where Goddess Mary is in her healing avatar. So people of all faith flock there once a year to be healed. They have a desire that gets fulfilled because of her intervention. They go back there and offer blessings. So it's like the Lourdes of the East. The Velankani church, if you see the followers, the devotees who throng there in thousands, are all wearing saffron. Not a very, saffron kind of a saffron, a little watered down, pinkish saffron. But where did the saffron of believers who are going to a church come from? It just came from living together, seeing somebody's color and liking it and adopting it. So these are the ways of living that promote amity, that promote mutual understanding, and that promote the understanding of identity in layers, which is the reason why there is categorical rejection of violence by communities, even by very, very conservative Muslim groups, if you would have them. They too, in India, condemn violence. The first one is mentioning New York Times, Friedman's article, if some of you are interested can see. When 26/11/2008, there was a terrorist attack in Mumbai. It was terrorists sent from another country. 8 of them were killed. The community refused to bury them in the local Muslim burial ground. They took the decision based on the notion that they are not Muslims. Anyone who's a suicide bomber who follows suicide, the Quran prohibits suicide, cannot be a Muslim. Anyone who commits violence against innocents cannot be a Muslim, because Islam says if you kill one innocent, it's equal to slaying an entire community. I would hate to engage in theological debates, because you can pick quotations. You need to go into the historicity and the contextuality of sacred texts to be able to really interpret things well. I do not have that knowledge. All that I know is that the community refused them space in its burial ground. And all I know is that even as lately as September 2015, the Jamaat-e-Islami, which by all counts can be said to be a moderate to conservative Muslim group, rejected ISIS and has started a mission of traveling across the states, visiting educational institutions, visiting madrasas, visiting groups and communities to speak against the nefarious intent of ISIS and to communicate to the youth. If some of them are so inclined, you have the internet, you have all these propaganda, you never know who is getting what input from where. So here are conservative community elements going out there to prevent radicalization. Now this, I believe, is the strength of a nation, is the strength of genuine multiculturalism, where it is done with respect for each other and not just as public policy. And of course, Martha knows I love Shakespeare, so it has to end with Shakespeare, that most often our remedies often ourselves do lie, which we ascribe to heaven. It's in living together that all solutions can be found. Thank you so much.
And we have time for questions. Who's going to be first? I know you all must have some questions. Okay.
Yes, please.
I agree with most, if not all, of what you say, but I'm wondering how you got through this whole presentation without addressing the rise of Hindu nationalism and Hindu radicalization. So if your argument works for Muslims, it should also work for Hindus. But we see in recent years in India that there is a rise of sort of very conservative, very fanatical Hinduism, and so how do you understand that in the context of what you just said?
I understand it as a political trajectory. I believe that we are in a certain moment in our political history where the Hindu right has a little larger voice. I wouldn't say the predominant voice, the only voice, or even the voice of the ruler. Because supposing you are to take our Prime Minister himself. He had, as Chief Minister of a state, a certain history which was debated, right or wrong. The jury is still out there. There's a judicial process that is being followed for what was perceived as a conflict-based relationship between Hindus and Muslims because of a resurgent, emergent, powerful Hindu right. The same man is the Prime Minister. And the same man is speaking a very moderate, a very secular, a very broad-based, a very inclusive, a very development agenda language. as I said earlier, it is the compulsions of politics in India. Your state politics can be done differently. Your national politics cannot be done by any one political party, any one community, by abrogating to itself the completeness of the nation, because it cannot. The nation is hugely multi-group, multi-layered. So the compromises, if you can call them compromises, in following a particular kind of a rightist ideology have to be made, because that is the demand of governance when you're dealing with such a diverse country, such a large country of so many competing interests. So while it is a trend, it is not the predominant trend. And even within the Hindu community, there are huge voices which question this trend. Perhaps, sometimes PR mechanisms and machineries work well. Sometimes social media presents one kind of an image. But the image I'm talking about is the image that I live in my little apartment with my neighbors of all complexions. My daughter goes to a school, and once her classmate asked her, "Does your father teach you how to make bombs?" Okay, so she's Muslim. So maybe the classmate hasn't seen or interacted with enough number of Muslims and posed a very funny question. My daughter came back feeling huge upset, huge umbrage. How do I counter this? I said, you invite her for her Eid function and you attend her next Diwali or Holi function and go and play colors with her. And that was how it was done. When you see two homes, which look so normal, where if I have a big wall hanging of Masjid-e-Munawwara, I also have a little Gautama Buddha head, which a friend has gifted me, sitting below it, because I like the teachings of Buddha also. I've read a lot of Buddhist literature. Does it make me any less of a Muslim? Which is why you have to look at everything in layers. Multiple frames. I wish Catherine was here. Multiple frames is what we need to apply. Shift gears, shift perspectives. Every context need not be understood only from the viewpoint of religion or religious identity or ethnic identity.
Any other questions?
Okay. Yes, Philip.
Well, I really like the presentation. I was just, and I just visited India once, and you're talking about how there's no radicalization, but like my first impression of Delhi was entering in every subway station and passing through practically like a gun nest and going through, there's like at least 20 people standing on this, 20 military people with full machine guns standing on every subway station in Delhi. What is that for? What are they protecting? What's the fear of the government to have such strong military presence?
Which year was this? When did you visit?
2014.
2014, gunmen in every metro station.
It's like entering the airport pretty much. Every time you go.
I think the normal security in any city would be present. I do not think there is, and there would be CIS. We have Central Industrial Security Forces, the paramilitary forces, which do your checks at the airport. We don't have a very strong TSA kind of an organization there. We are still, so all these public installations would have normal policing. If the police is absent, if the local Delhi police is short in numbers, they would take help from the paramilitary forces. It would primarily be in terms of numerical assistance, not in terms of any extra threat perception. Yes, Alex.
In one of our classes, I heard that President of Afghanistan, Karzai, he wears his clothes, which consist of different parts of national clothes of different minorities in Afghanistan. Do your top officials, for example, President, Prime Minister, use such approach to stress that India is a multicultural country or no?
See, as far as our law and our constitution is concerned, we have an approach which is not that the state and religion are antithetical or will stay apart. It is an approach where there are multiple religions and principled distance of the state from each, which would translate into equidistance from each, but which would also envisage situations where the state could regulate religious organizations, religious movements in the interest of public order, morality, health. There are 3 specific grounds on which religious activity can be regulated. Otherwise, our fundamental rights guaranteed to an Indian citizen is of freedom of faith, freedom of conscience, and freedom to profess, practice, and propagate our religion.
But I think what he's asking is, would Modi wear a prayer cap, or would he wear ethnic clothing from different from different regions of India? Would he wear
some Muslim hat or something like this? To show his
as far as the news items go till now, the Prime Minister has not worn a prayer cap, and hence there have been discussions galore around how this represents a rightist view, how it represents non-identification with a minority community. To my mind, somewhere we get caught up in symbolism to such an extent that fundamentals tend to get overlooked. If the agenda set by the government of India is one of development, everybody will benefit, regardless of someone who's, I'm not wearing a cap. I don't even look like a Muslim. But does it make me any less of a Muslim? So these are identity issues which are best left in the private domain. In the public domain, let issues of development, education, health, environment focus. And when you frame your national agenda like that, they cannot be framed differently for different communities, which is not to say that there are no targeted minority development, lower caste development, regional development kind of programs. For separate languages, for example, to develop them, there are different programs. There is state fund allocated, but they are not the sum and substance of the entire national policy debate.
So they try to be neutral.
I guess that works best.
He doesn't try.
Because, for example, if your president or prime minister is representative of majority in your country, and he will wear traditional suit of your country, it will be a kind of disrespect to other members of other minorities. That's why.
Unfortunately, the diversity in our country is great that you wouldn't be able to identify what is the traditional suit of any community or of any state. We have 28 states. Each state has within it multiple ethnic groups. So if he goes to visit one tribe in one state of northeastern country, he may have a different headgear. How many headgears can you change? Perhaps one headgear sends one particular message, perhaps another one sends a particular message. To my mind, the larger message is that the absence to wear a headgear has not interfered with the largely developmental agenda that the country has set for itself under a constitution that everyone swears allegiance to. Yes, please.
In India, the Muslims are somewhat backward, it is admitted. And with this new social media tools and WhatsApp, everything, the speed of communication has increased to a great extent. So what changes you perceive that will bring?
See, Muslims in India are educationally backward, lowest literacy rates. They are economically backward. They are backward in terms of access to credit. They are entrepreneurially backward. They are traditionally still in the artisanal kind of vocations and haven't made the shift to the modern industrial kind of occupational complexes. That process is a slow process. Why was it slow? Because when we had partition, when in 1947, the entire elite Muslim went to Pakistan. What was left behind was a very impoverished motley group of minority Muslims who had to, in a sense, start a fresh journey. It is only now that a real middle class is getting created in the community. Earlier, we always had these mullahs and these very, very traditional elements speaking as if they're speaking for the community in a monolithic voice. It is only now that the plurality of identities within Muslims is being recognized. Islam is supposed to have a patriarchal kind of a, father to son to grandson kind of inheritance line. We have the Mopla Muslims in Kerala who are completely matrilineal. How do you account for this social structural diversity through one voice? It is only now that when a Muslim educated middle class is emerging that you are finding better voices to represent the community, more saner voices. Unfortunately, saner voices don't really bring in your eyeballs in television programs. So you still have the inch for those who speak the voice of hate to get the biggest talk time on television. At the ground level, it is people like me, people like my friends, who ought to represent the community, its concerns and its interests. And hopefully we are doing it, we will get there. And this educational backwardness needn't necessarily be juxtaposed only with the social media and its speed of communication. In fact, there was a very cynical kind of an article which said, Muslims in India are not radicalized because they're so poor. They don't have access to internet. And most of the jihadi literature is available on internet, so they don't read it, hence they are not radicalized. That to me was a very fatuous kind of argument, but it just shows you that development and all that comes along with it has to be handled within a separate kind of a frame where you are thinking integrated, inclusive, universal.
Any other last questions? Final thoughts, Jessica?
Yes, the final thoughts ultimately, for me, can be summed up only in 2 lines. You live integrated, you create integrated, and only then you walk away from hate and radicalization. Thank you.
Thank you.